Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your hosts on fire!
I am John.
And I'm CC. And when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. John, what is happening? Why is there already a new episode? It's been only a week.
Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
I guess that's it. Yeah, probably. I don't know either. Anyway, today we will cool you down and then heat you right back up. First, I will take a look at the dark political mystery thriller Babylon and the many disturbing things going on in its fictional city district of Shiniki. And after that, both John and I will unleash our burning shonen hearts once again and talk about the newest anime series from the creator of Soul Eater. So we will discuss the many demon-fighting adventures of the motley crew from Fire Force. Sounds like a hot time, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Zen Sesaki, a public prosecutor, and his young apprentice Atsuhiko Fumio are both working for the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office in the newly created Shiniki District, which serves as a testing ground for a new nation. They investigate a pharmaceutical company promoting a defective drug following reports of falsified test results by university labs. During the investigation, Shin Inaba, an anesthetist, is found dead and a bloodstained document is discovered which includes hair and skin covered with the letter F. The ongoing investigation leads to a sinister plot regarding the mayoral elections and manipulation of the Shiniki population. But Zen has no idea how deep this rabbit hole will go, and that involving himself with the true mastermind behind this disturbing mystery will turn his life into a living nightmare that might cost him everything he holds dear. So Babylon, not Tokyo Babylon or Fate Grand Order, Absolute Babylonic Front, or...
There are like 2 or 3 shows that have some variant of the word Babylon going on right now, and that's why I was super confused that this was something different from something else, man.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. But yeah, it's just Babylon for this one, and it is based on a series of novels by Mado Nozaki, and those novels ran for 3 volumes from 2015 to 2017. It also got a manga adaptation that ran for 2 volumes from February to October of last year. And judging from the premiere date of the anime, which was also in October, I assume both the manga and the anime adaptation were developed at the same time. But I'm not sure about that. I mean, anime production takes longer than manga production, I assume. So it kind of makes sense that the anime either started earlier or they both started at the same time. Manga wrapped up earlier, naturally, but yeah. So I wonder, I assume they both have the same ending, probably in line with the novels. The author, Mado Nozaki, also wrote the script for the anime series Kado, The Right Answer, a show I checked out for one of our sneak peeks, if I remember correctly. But it was one of those anime that made the baffling decision to mix CG with traditionally animated characters, so I jumped ship immediately, even though the premise was pretty damn interesting. But yeah, that was like, nope, not gonna do that. But Babylon doesn't engage in this kind of tomfoolery, so it's traditionally animated all the way through, and not only that, but it looks quite great actually. And responsible for that is a relatively new studio called Reveroot. They are actually a subsidiary of Twin Engine, which came up several times before in shows we have watched, but we have barely mentioned them, I think. They are an anime planning and production company established in October 2014 by former Fuji TV's Noitamina blog's executive editor Koji Yamamoto. And they also act as a network of animation studios, both in partnership and ownership. So you might have already seen their special intro animation in front of a show you watched without realizing it, which is the CG render of a motorcycle engine and then these bikers that ride away into the night. And the back of one of those bikers' jackets usually has the name of the studio Twin Engine is working with for any given anime on it. We had that for Wit Studio and Vinland Saga. For Geno Studios stuff like Kokoku, Gon Kamui, and currently Pet. Geno was actually formed by Twin Engine from former Manglobe staff after that studio went bankrupt. Twin Engine also helped with the production on Dororo with MAPPA, and now Reveroot which they formed in 2016, I believe. And the only other full animation production credit for Reveroot up till now is the new Fooly Cooly alternative stuff, both the movie and the TV series, which I haven't checked out. I heard mixed things about it. Aside from that, they have done mostly in between and finished animation on projects like Promised Neverland, Stars Align, Run with the Wind, the new season of Haikyuu, and a bunch of other things.
So everything up your alley.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, the animation for Babylon is really damn good. Sharp character models and often very expressive body and facial animation, which is important since this is a very talky show with a big cast. I think one of the most impressive scenes is an interrogation scene in the second episode, which is this super intense verbal exchange of blows between Zen and a female suspect, which we'll get to momentarily in the character section. And it's really remarkable how much personality the animators managed to imbue those two characters with through really detailed facial animation and body language. Zen becoming like more and more frustrated with the interrogation because it's not going his way, and the cracks showing in his stoic demeanor are like visualized perfectly. And so are the nonchalant theatrics of the suspect, who starts coming across, like in the beginning she is coming across as innocent, coy, and naive, like looking away from Zen or the camera with these small side glimpses, like it seems like she's in over her head in this situation. And then suddenly she shifts gears at a certain point, switching to a completely different body language and thus transforming the atmosphere and power dynamics in the scene in an instant. And this is all done through the meticulous animation and the fantastic voice performances by Yuichi Nakamura and Satsuki Yukino, which I definitely want to highlight because they make those intense scenes in the beginning of the show sing. Speaking of singing, the soundtrack is also great, which shouldn't come as a surprise since it's done by a person we just recently mentioned in our review of Vinland Saga, and that's Yutaka Yamada, who, besides Vinland Saga and Babylon, has also done the music for Tokyo Ghoul and Majestic Prince. And just like in Vinland Saga, the score in Babylon switches effortlessly between dark, moody, or melancholic piano tracks, fast-paced contrabass-heavy jazz tunes, and dramatic full orchestra scores for the big story reveals and stuff like that. I think it's once again fantastic work and manages to help establish a certain atmosphere, with one exception maybe. And that is the theme of the main antagonist, which I found to be weirdly goofy and unfittingly popish, like really pop music-ish and way too upbeat and everything, especially considering which scenes it's played in. So very weird choice there. I don't know why they did that or why the composer did that. Quite strange. But yeah, presentation-wise, aside from that, I have nothing to complain here. So how does the story fare? Well, it definitely starts strong. We are introduced to our supposed main character pairing with Zen and Atsuhiko, who stumble over something truly sinister while investigating this seemingly standard case. And during the course of the first episode, they come to the conclusion that someone is trying to influence the mayoral election for this new district west of Tokyo called Shiniki. I don't know how it's correctly pronounced, so I'm just going to call it Shiniki. There are two candidates running against each other in this election. The veteran Ryuichiro Nomaru, who is the former Secretary General of the Liberal Justice Party, and the young upstart Kaika Itsuki, who is the youngest mayoral candidate with only 30 years old. And at first, it looks like Nomura is the one trying to garner backing from politically influential people by offering them sexual favors from a ring of prostitutes under his secret employment. And one of those women met with the anesthetist our investigators find dead in his apartment, but who seems to have committed suicide. So that is weird. And to snuff out all the connections that might be at play here, they go after the women and the people involved with them. And after following one of the women at the end of the first episode, Atsuhiko ends up dead in his apartment as well. And it seems like he hanged himself, which Zen is incredibly distraught by, naturally, not only because he was very fond of Atsuhiko, which you can immediately tell in their first couple of scenes together. Like, Zen is is very strict with his apprentice, because that's just who Zen is. He is this cold, stoic, block of ice, cold prosecutor, justice above all guy. Like, if Edgeworth was even more uptight.
Wow.
Yeah. But if you listen to what he says and how he reacts to certain things, with the faint smile, etc., you instantly get that he has high hopes for the boy. And since he has got to know him very well already, he is certain that Atsuhiko would have never ended his own life willingly. He was definitely murdered. So right in the first episode, you have a great plot set up with a bunch of characters who have big question marks plastered on their faces, a lot of political intriguing machinations, mysterious murders, great atmosphere. So, you know me, I'm already in at this point. It's like, yeah, okay, this is up my alley, thank you, I'm gonna keep watching. And it gets even better in the second episode, which is almost entirely the interrogation of a woman that is suspected to be one of the prostitutes in Nomaru's employee, named Emiko Hiramatsu. And like I already said in the animation section, this is such an intense exchange, which is presented so incredibly well, that it had me on the edge of my seat all the way through. Once Emiko puts on that confident smile, you know shit is not gonna go down the way Zen expects it to go. And from that moment on, she relentlessly pushes his buttons, agrees to sign a confession about what she did, about the sexual favors and everything, if Zen answers some of her questions. And then she questions him on his childhood, his job, his sex life, his opinion on justice, on good and evil. And you can just feel how Zen slowly loses his carefully maintained cool, and it's riveting to watch. And even more frustrating to Zen, she actually manages to escape the interrogation room and the actual building while Zen was taking a break without the guy still in the room stopping her. So I'm even more in now. What the fuck is going on here? And in the third episode, we get a bunch of big reveals. Like the first one being Nomaru actually admitting to influencing the votes because he wants Itsuki to win, because he thinks that guy is the future. The district of Shiniki is like this special administrative zone for testing out new laws, and Nomaru intends to bypass blocky bureaucracy and fast-track things like greenlighting new construction and testing and approving new drugs, where his dealings with the pharmaceutical company Zen and Atsuhiko were investigating comes in. Like all the things that would take a really long time in the rest of Japan to make happen currently. So this whole election is only a big charade, a big scam, basically, and all of Zen's superiors are actually in the know. So this is like a highly illegal conspiracy thing, all in the hands of Nomaru, which he admits to. And Zen is naturally pissed off because he has a very clear opinion on what's right and wrong, but Nomaru also says that he wasn't involved with the murders of the doctor and Atsuhiko. And he also says, hey, you can fight me, but I will fight back, and my lawyers will tear you apart. You got nothing, right? So, yeah. Zen is in a shitty place, but like I said, Nomaru also says, hey, I didn't need to tell you all of this, but I'm telling you now because I also want you to know I didn't have anything to do with those murders, and I want you to investigate them. Keep on investigating them. So, shifting allegiances, more questions. Who is actually responsible for this? What is happening? And then the episode ends with a rapid fire of revelations. First, Zen learns that all the women involved with the case seem to be one and the same woman, who is basically able to change her appearance so drastically that she looks like a completely different woman each time she appears on the scene. Like her role as Emiko Hiramatsu in the interrogation. And her real name is Ai Magase. And then finally, Kaika Itsuki gets elected mayor, and immediately enacts a new law called the suicide law that is supposed to grant any person in Shiniki the right to commit suicide without it being considered illegal or wrong in any way, and thus removing the fear and stigma of suicide in society, and for it to be openly discussed in society. And to prove his point, he lets 64 people who ostensibly want to take their own lives jump from the top of the highest building in the district. And I'm like sitting there, mouth wide open. Holy shit, this is crazy. What the fuck is happening? I kind of love it. It's super crazy and weird, but I want to see where the show is going. And then, right at the end of the episode, while looking at the people plummeting to their deaths, Zen starts thinking about the document he and Atsuhiko uncovered. The one with the hair and the blood and scribbled all over with the letter F. And he's like, but the anesthetist and Atsuhiko didn't want to die. Someone made them commit suicide. Someone who's behind all of this. F. Female. And I'm like, wait, is this show actually really dumb garbage? And boy, is it ever!
Oh, no.
Surprise, everyone! Just like me, you just have been severely bamboozled and led astray, because this was a Trash Stash review all along!
Wow, you had me going.
Because from this moment on, this show starts its slow but determined, very determined decline towards one of the worst dumpster fires I have ever seen in anime.
Oof.
This is my punishment for only watching 3 episodes and then postponing watching the rest of the show until it had finished. But after we had already set our review schedule set in stone for this season. Okay, to be fair, it's only partially my fault because this show also took a 1 or 2 month break between episode 7 and 8. And it only gets really bad with episode 8, so maybe I still would have picked it for a review if I had watched up to episode 7 instead of 3. I don't know. I can't tell at this point. Because this is how it is right now. And man, yeah, woof. Let's get into this. So, at this point, episode 3, there was only this small crack in its facade. That made me think, okay, that was kind of dumb and bad and ridiculous. But maybe it was just this strange misstep. Like, considering how strong the show was up to this point, I had no real reason to believe that it would turn out the way it did. And then over the course of episode 4 to 7, more cracks start to show, and the masks start to crumble away. And then in episode 8, it jumps the shark, and then it jumps a whale, and then a dinosaur, and yeah, holy shit. So since this is a Trash Stash review, I'm gonna spoil the living shit out of this, just so you know. I mean, I have already given away a lot, but the big hits are still coming, so in case you, for whatever reason, still want to check this show out, maybe skip to the next review now. So after the event of episode 3, Zen starts to form the special investigation team to locate Kaika Itsuki and Ai Magase, which are nowhere to be found. And the whole procedural aspect of this is portrayed very well, giving us a detailed look at all the different members of the Special Investigation Unit, trying to pool their resources and the results from each of their investigative threats, like together, to find something they can pin on Itsuki. That's one of the aspects I like about procedurals, like when each member of a team does what they're great at to catch a culprit. So again, at this point, I'm still hopeful. Zen also gets a new co-worker called Hyasa Sekuro, and since Ai Magase seems to be a fucking shapeshifter or something, the viewer, of course, is intended to be immediately suspicious of Hyasa. As it turns out, this is a red herring, but we'll get to that. Then Zen and his cop buddy Shinobu track down the uncle of Ai Magase, who is this psychiatrist, I guess, who kind of lives in solitary somewhere. And he tells them, and I'm not kidding, several students in middle school came to him and told him that Magase had violated them. Not by touching them, though, but with her mind. The way he explains it, and this is where things start getting really dumb and really gross, is that Magase, as a middle schooler, keep that in mind, had so much sex appeal that not only her fellow students, but also he himself, a grown-ass middle-aged man, got so involuntarily horny when she was in the room that he equates this to a rape. Like she raped them with her sex appeal. Which is the biggest yikes on so many fucking levels. I don't even know how to unpack this. It's horrible. Ignoring for a second all the possibly supernatural implications. Like, this is just a gross mischaracterization of what rape is and how this relates to the sexual attraction of women and /or girls. If you read the subtext of a statement like that, it matches 1-to-1 the things rapists have said in regards to their victims along the lines of, well, she was asking for it, Your Honor. I was so dumbstruck by that scene. Its implications, its writing, it was also so disturbingly bad. My hope that this could stay a good show started to not slowly evaporate at this point. It was kind of gone with the poof, but I tried to lie to myself. I thought, yeah, well, this is some really shitty subtext here, but hey, maybe they at least handwave it with a weird supernatural or superpower gimmick later. You know, pharmaceutical companies are involved, so maybe something was done to Ai that gave her mind-controlled superpowers, and now she's like this Poison Ivy character and out for revenge against society because what happened to her, and she has Itsuki under her spell and everything. You know, something like that could still turn out to be interesting or cool or not as problematic. And then Itsuki announces he will hold a debate with the leaders of political parties live on TV to discuss his suicide law. He says, hey, this is a democracy. The people decide if this law is actually going to happen or not. And Zen decides, since his team couldn't find any sufficiently compromising evidence that Itsuki actually forced those 64 people to jump to arrest him, Zen will step back from his role as public prosecutor and arrest and abduct Itsuki as a civilian, because he is afraid that if, you know, he lets this go on any longer, more people will die. More people actually have already died. I think since the enactment of the law, like 200 people or something have committed suicide. And Zen's whole team decides to back him up, though, luckily for him, even if it costs them their jobs and freedom, because they share his view and they look up to him and everything. So we get this TV debate where the party leaders argue against the law and Itsuki for it, which is actually kind of interesting. And it all culminates in the reveal of a masked boy who went online a couple of days ago and asked for someone to help him to stop his dad from committing suicide. And naturally, Nomaru and the other party leaders want to use that boy as a tool to convince the public and Itsuki that that law is wrong. And they bring the boy into the studio together with his mom. And to everyone's surprise, that boy turns out to be Itsuki's son, who has a heart problem. And his father wants to commit suicide himself to be able to give his heart to his son to save his son's life, which under current Japanese law apparently wouldn't be possible. This is when the show got my hopes up again, because immediately Itsuki turns from this enigma with a weird political agenda into a father who is trying to save his child. And that is, of course, very relatable and makes not only the viewer, but also the public empathize with him, which shifts the votes for the law completely in Itsuki's favor at this moment. And right after that happens, at the beginning of episode 7, Zen sets his plan into motion to abduct Itsuki, and everything goes to shit. Because the woman posing as the boy's mom was, of course, Ai Magase, who promptly convinces everyone, and I mean everyone, on Zen's team to kill themselves. Zen finds most of them already dead, but then he has to witness his buddy Shinobu shoot himself in the head after going on this off-putting tirade about how the drive to kill yourself is like your sex drive. And the moment right before pulling the trigger is like the moment before you orgasm and ejaculate. And yes, yes, I am sorry, but that's what happens. And the visual language here is not even remotely ambiguous. You can imagine what's happening on screen. Yes, what's happening on screen. Like the way the blood is dripping from his body and like freezing in a puddle around his body and like the blood streaming from his head wound and everything. It's all very, very clear what this is alluding to and what this is supposed to be a metaphor for. And then Zen gets a video call from Ai, who makes him watch while she takes his new coworker Yasa, who she has abducted and strapped to a table, apart piece by piece with an axe. All while monologuing to him about good and evil again. And all of this is interspliced with scenes of Zen's wife and son preparing a meal at home. So when Ai raises her axe to cut off Yasa's leg, we see Zen's wife cutting off a piece of cheese or something.
fucking masterful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All this is so morbidly funny that I had to laugh, but that paired with Ai's weirdly funky and misplaced musical theme that gets played in that scene that I mentioned before makes this scene so weirdly humorous and incredibly disturbing at the same time. Like, I didn't know how to feel. I was looking at this fucking horrible scene where a woman gets chopped to pieces while she's still alive. And then you see these cuts, like, interwoven into that, where they prepare a salad and then, or I don't know, a bit of rice and then just fucking slush some ketchup onto it. It's so dumb. So stupid. Yeah, it's so over the top and unsubtle. It reminded me of Death Note very much. So did the entirety of the show, actually. More on that later. Also, if you take a look at one of the promo artworks for the series, it gives some not so subtle hints at how all of Zen's teammates will die in the show, which is kind of clever, but also stupid. So it's in line with the show, I guess. So after this, the show took a long break, like I said. And I might or might not have gone back to it after this admittedly engaging and thrilling, but also ridiculously stupid episode. But still, up to this point, the show was at least never boring. It was already plenty trash, but it was definitely kind of engaging in its ridiculousness. So, yeah, I don't know. I might have gone back if I hadn't binged it just a few days ago. I don't know why they took that long break, if there were problems in the production side of things. Maybe they had to wait for the manga at a certain point. I don't know. If they changed something wanted to change something in regards to how the show further progressed, that would explain some things. I mean, I don't know how the story progresses in the manga and in the novels, but, it could be different, and the show could have an original ending. Considering how it continues, holy shit. That was a bad decision. I mean, the show has like 3 writers. Maybe not a good sign.
I mean, that's not super uncommon to have more than one person working on the script. It's usually like working on different episodes. I mean, if you have 3 writers working on like all the same episodes, then I feel like you might want to be like, hey, hold up.
Yeah. And I mean, the novels have 3 story arcs, like 3 novels, and the anime has 3 story arcs. So I assume it's the same. Mm-hmm. And I mean, those novels were finished already in 2017. So I doubt there's much difference between those 2 things. I would like to know if there's a difference. I haven't read the novels, like I said, I haven't read the manga. So I don't know if I'll ever find that out or have the incentive to, like, the motivation to try to find out myself if I don't stumble over it at some point. But yeah, like I said, be it as stupid, offensive, weird, ridiculous, ludicrous, whatever in the plot department as it was until this point, like I said, the show was still engaging. It was engaging trash. I would say I enjoyed it to that point. This changes with episode 8. Because now the show moves away from Shiniki as the suicide law becomes a global phenomenon. And we get introduced to a bunch of new characters from all over the world. Among them, none other than the President of the United States of America, Alexander W. Wood, who is the most indecisive political leader I have ever seen. Well, maybe except for our current German chancellor, hard to tell. But that's why everyone calls him the Thinker, because he thinks very long and hard about every problem he faces, which, don't get me wrong, in itself should be a good thing. But he doesn't seem to be doing much else. He also has this really dumb backstory, how he met his supermodel wife because he was good at an MMORPG that looks like Diablo. What? Like, sure, that's a thing that happens. And then she got him to, I don't know, fucking clench his asshole and become president of the United States, I guess. But, what the fuck? That was so apropos and weird. And during the rest of the show, you have, like, when something happens in real life, you have, like, these scenes from his MMO that are interspliced where characters react to events in real life in the MMO as well. Okay. I don't get it, but alright, I guess to show it's a global phenomenon, not only in real life, but also in the gaming world, sure, why not? Okay, so Zen gets recruited into the FBI because he's kind of the expert on the investigation into the people behind that law, and even though he lost his whole team, his job too, I think, basically his whole life, I mean, his wife and son are still with him, and he should maybe, be fine with that and just stay at home, but he still hasn't given up on catching and/or killing at least Ai Magase for what she did. And the rest of the show from this moment on is how different world leaders react to the law being adopted by cities in their respective countries, like Italy, France, Germany, Britain, Canada, US. I'm missing one because it's the G7. Whatever. But yeah, shows you what I know. But anyway, yeah. And some of those characters having inane, pointless discussions about suicide. After the setting of the show shifts away from Shiniki, the series gets buried under its obtuse thought exercise and becomes super boring. Like, mind-numbingly boring. Incredibly so fucking boring. The last half or third of the show descends into asking its main question over and over again without adding any interesting developments or general progression to it. It feels like someone is constantly trying to shout, "What if suicide though?" And also such little questions at "What is good and evil?" and "What is the meaning of life?" at you, without having any intention of actually trying to answer the questions in various ways and from various interesting perspectives that don't boil down to incredibly hollow platitudes. It completely loses its focus after the first half, aiming for some kind of grand statement or ambition that it never makes or realizes. Another of the biggest problems in the main thesis that it poses is that it fails to sell us on the idea that legalizing suicide would suddenly result in actual mass suicides all over the world. I mean, maybe it's just me, but even for anime, I found that to be a big leap of faith and suspense of disbelief. I mean, I try to explain it because, there's no stigma to it. People might actually be more easily convinced to commit suicide. There are a bunch of reasons how they try to explain that, why people want to commit suicide and why not, and why that might in certain cases be a good thing. And some of that is interesting and a valid starting point for discussion, but it's not much else. It's the beginning of a discussion, and that's it. And the show doesn't go anywhere with it. Never, ever. Also, some of the legal aspects and rule sets in this just don't work out, I think. I know shit about the Japanese legal system, but I think the assumptions the show makes about how, for example, American laws work, once it extends the scope of its storytelling to a global scale, are more than a little wrong. And it's all in service of making the premise work, on the world stage, of course, but it's hard to overlook the corners the writing is cutting to get its characters where it wants them to be, even though they don't really do anything, and to get its story to a certain point. And going back to the whole suicide, yes, no, good thing, bad thing, thought exercise, in general, I felt a bit in over my head, or at least out of my depths and comfort zone when it came to the discussion the show wanted to have on its main topic. It feels like an approach so completely different from my own views, and I wonder if I would be able to put myself more easily into the author's frame of mind if I grew up as part of Japanese culture and its value sets. It felt so alien, and maybe that was the author's intent, to try to elaborate on and openly discuss a taboo approach to a very sociologically and morally problematic subject matter. But ultimately, the show is talking a lot about suicide without saying much of anything, even though by the end it makes a somewhat definitive statement on its exploration of what's good and evil. But despite, or maybe because of all the obtuse, overwrought, philosophical pondering that came before it, the final thesis is too shallow and feels mighty pretentious. And I know that is a dangerous word to use, since people like to throw it at media that tries to tackle heady, ambitious topics they don't understand or don't want to make an effort to seriously engage with. But in my opinion, it all depends on if the text, show, movie, game, whatever, has ultimately something worthwhile to say or not. I don't feel like Babylon did. Not even remotely. I'm pretty sure its creators thought they did, but they really don't. I don't know. How do you feel, John, about like shows that try to go into more esoteric or philosophical stuff and maybe use more abstract visual language and stuff like that? Would you categorize them as pretentious stuff in general, or is there something worthwhile in those sometimes? Have you come across such a show or such, a media thing?
I mean, you're asking me to pull something out of my head.
If there's nothing, there's nothing. But, I was just interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I know some people who generally don't like how some shows try to tackle these things with super talky narratives and stuff like that and immediately call them pretentious, if they just get engaged with like very heady philosophical discussions. And I personally don't mind that as long as the show is actually making a statement by the end or having something interesting or worthwhile to say.
I mean, it's easy to just throw that word out there so you can just write it off because you don't like something, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But, I mean, I can't really pull anything out of my head at this moment. But it depends on, largely how your story is framed and what you're trying to say before, you can throw that out there. Like, there are some shows that I think that we've watched or that I've watched in the past that I've been like, all right, that was a thing, but I never really thought they were pretentious. Like, you brought up FLCL earlier when talking about the show's credits. That was a show I never really got behind, even back when it was new, like the original FLCL. I remember sitting down and watching it and just at the end being like, and that's sort of it. It's obviously supposed to be this, if you've seen it, spoilers for a 20-something-year-old show, whatever. It's supposed to be, a story about puberty and growing up and coming of age, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I remember.
But it's very obtuse in the way it's told. And I mean, certainly there's some imagery in there that supports it. Some subtle, some not so subtle, like whatever, I think the main character's name is Nauta, having the horn grow out of his head.
Yeah.
But that aside, I remember that show just being like, you sure did the thing.
Yeah.
And I walked away from it sort of just like shrugging and not really caring. And it sounds like this would be this show you're talking about now would be the same sort of thing for me, because I don't like to throw around pretentious unless something actually come across like that. Like, even when we were talking about Id Invaded during our sneak preview, I think the show's a bit up its own ass. I don't think it's pretentious, but I think it's a little up its own ass. So, there's a difference. It's a fine line, I feel like, to really sort of walk down. It's something that the writers need to recognize and something that the viewers need to recognize too.
Yeah, and I don't mind being a show, like a show being up its own ass. Hell, even Psychopaths, to an extent, it's up its own ass. It's great first season. In certain points you can say, okay, this gets... it's a bit self-indulgent, especially when it comes to its philosophical discussions. Like, Makishima, was that the bad guy?
Yes.
He likes to mention certain authors of philosophical works and likes to kind of explain to the audience, through explaining it to other characters, what their theses are and what that means, filling us in on his point of view and stuff like that. And then from that, doing something that makes sense in the confines of that show and everything. If you come into that show and are not very open to these kind of things, you can say, okay, yeah, stop it, guys. Like, I get it. Fucking Urobuchi, you read some books. Which like, I can understand that approach. I can even appreciate it. But still, I felt like Psychopaths was one of those shows that at the end had something interesting to say about society, about crime, about psychology, about many of those topics. Not only spurring on some interesting discussions about that stuff, but also making some interesting statements about it and giving me some food for thought where I felt like, oh, okay, yeah, I got something from that. I feel like I have formed a thought, or I've come to a realization that I didn't have before, and I feel enriched through that. And as long as the show gives me that, as obtuse as it might have been before, as kind of up its own ass as it might have been before, or borderline pretentious, if you want to call it that. Again, that's not the word I would choose for those kind of shows. Then I'm fine with it. I'm totally okay with it. For me, a show is pretentious when it does these things, when it chooses to use these narrative vehicles that trying to make the characters engage in endless discussions about philosophical concept, social concepts, everything, without really staring, without being courageous enough to actually make definitive statements, without actually saying anything interesting. And that is Babylon's problem, in my opinion. It tries to set things up for that, but then it starts setting them up again, and it always returns to its starting point and always asks the same question without doing anything else with it. The show definitely gave me food for thought during its runtime. It posted some questions where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Let's see where they go with this. And then it doesn't go anywhere. Just because a show gives you food for thought doesn't make it automatically a good show, in my opinion. It depends on what it does with the things it brings up and how it brings them across. Yeah.
Then there are shows that have the opposite problem. They're just browbeating you with their main themes. I remember with God, I dropped it like a bad habit. The Price of Smiles, where it was the theme was hey, did you know war is bad? And it's yes, no.
Thanks.
Did you know though? Yes. No, but shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people have been saying that about, for example, the story of Death Stranding. I heard a lot of people coming away from that game being this is just fucking self-indulging, philosophical drivel that is not, deep or tackling anything interesting and is super on the nose. It feels for a lot of people, in fact, Kojima thought he was being really clever with certain things, but all this stuff is so obvious and not a big revelation or anything, or not a new thing he's saying or new statement. It's just someone being oh, what about this? What about this? And that's the entire game, apparently. And that was very unsatisfying for a lot of people, so I've heard. I haven't played it myself. I can't attest to that. It's just something that came to mind.
But did you know? Yeah. S in Strand stands for strands.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard. Did you know that the character, when he's named Die Hard Man, he's hard to kill?
Kojima, you know what? I love that you get to do you, but maybe you need someone to rein you in.
Yeah. I mean, he was already plenty crazy in his Metal Gear Solid days, but still, Metal Gear Solid 2, but still, maybe...
Yes, Solid 2 especially, holy shit.
But there was still something in there, and yeah, I don't know. But we're veering off topic here. We're going into game discussion, which is also interesting. But I don't want to talk about Death Stranding too much because, like I said, I haven't played it. But that just came to mind when you brought up browbeating with its topics. So it seems that game has a problem too, and Babylon has that too.
I feel like a very plain as day browbeating is this probably the one. The biggest thing that puts me off is please don't keep pushing your themes in my face like that. Just, you can present them in other ways. You can be subtle. You can be meaningful. You don't have to be this is what this is about, because you can sort of glean what things are about from context.
Yeah. Like I said, the first half show gave me the idea, okay, they're tackling some interesting topics here. Then there was this TV debate that was also still interesting, what it brought up, and different sides. And I was really interested to see where that strand goes. And then it did what it did, and holy shit, mix into that all the weird things, the subtext that I mentioned before, and especially when it comes to how it presents certain ideas, or the it's ultimately one note of putting characterization of its main antagonist. It's just no, this is a bad show. This is, and even if it gave me some food for thought, that's not enough. Also, to get back to the characters, I get that the show wants us to understand that I really pushes the usually calm and collected prosecutor's buttons, but then screaming, "Magazine!" every time he hears her voice or sees her, it's just hilarious. It's just fucking like it's like Dr. Claw. I don't know, some supervillain thing that was just hilarious. And
only if someone says, "I'll get you next time, Gadget."
Yeah, like I said before, in that way it feels a bit like Death Note. And I know a lot of people like that show, but I was always kind of lukewarm in it. Death Note worked best when the focus was on the mind-gamey cat and mouse game between L and Light. And once L was out of the picture, the show lost a lot of steam and overstayed its welcome, in my opinion. And same can be...
I super agree. Like, I started to watch Death Note, and then after L died, I was like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah. And same can be said for Babylon. The beginning makes the same fun, schlocky promises as Death Note. Interesting thought exercise, ridiculous over-dramatized execution with a supernatural twist, maybe, and initially very engaging characters. But once it moves past a certain point in the story, its confident, boastful stride first becomes a stumble, and then it falls, and then slowly limps or crawls over the finish line without saying or doing anything interesting at the same time. Now, Death Note never got as bad as Babylon because it was neither aiming that high, nor did it shift its focus away too much from its mind game detective plot. But still, this is why Death Note didn't work for me after a while, besides its mind games and trash appeal. There might be some interesting thought exercises in there, just like in Babylon, but they are all deafened by the loud crescendo of anime over-dramatization and ridiculous nonsense. And in Babylon, you mix to that it being super boring. you lose all engagement. And that's never a good thing. And I love the fucking, like, what I mentioned before, like the anime over-dramatization and the nonsense. I love this. I love that anime is that way. I love that it's this hyper-emotional nonsense fest, especially in shonen anime. Like, it can get me really invested. But it just doesn't work in serious thriller stories like this. They need a different tone. And Babylon didn't pull that off. It just, I don't know if it didn't want to, or if the writers weren't, like, if the writing wasn't up to snuff, like if the writers couldn't just couldn't do it. They tried to make it scary and off-putting and disturbing and just made it hilarious, but it just, it turned into ridiculous trash, and then it turned into boring nonsense. And yeah, like I said, Babylon becomes much more long-winded and meandering in its last third. It feels very aimless until the last couple of minutes of the final episode. Like, we get this really long, incredibly stupid discussion on good and evil between the G7 summit world leaders. And the writing in that is so bad and dumb and pointless that it made me do this weird mix of groaning and giggling at the same time. I don't know if that happened to you before. I'm glad that nobody heard that. And the ending, man, it's just the exclamation mark on the fuck you the show has been throwing our way for most of its runtime now. Like, Magase manages to mind control President Wood into jumping off the roof of the summit building right after he finally found an answer to the question what good actually means, no less. Oh, the irony! And because the president of the United States jumping off a building in front of the whole world would naturally convince everyone around the globe that the suicide law is a good thing, Zen, who's also there, decides to shoot the president dead, because then he can commit suicide.
What?
And then I ostensibly kills Zen too. The end. This show started out as a promising thriller procedural with great animation, a great soundtrack, an engaging mystery and characters, some surprising plot twists, an initially really interesting thought exercise on the topic of suicide, and then it turns into this inane, obtuse, unbearable, overwrought, boring mess that was a pain to sit through, at least in its second half. Before that, it already went from interesting to bad, and I can deal with bad, but then it became meandering and boring at the same time, and I can't deal with that.
I feel like it's worse to be boring than bad.
Yes. You could even say it's worse to be mediocre than bad. Like, yeah, often that's the case. Because, if something is really bad in a good way, you know what I mean, really trashy, then it can be really enjoyable. more so than a really run-of-the-mill show. And Babylon could still, even after its first half, could still have been that. Like, if it really leaned into its ridiculousness, got some really more interesting plot twists in there, and had the plot moving into a really interesting, fast-paced direction, maybe something interesting could have happened. Maybe the show could have at least be an entertaining trash stash entry from beginning to end. But like this, it's not. It's horrible, it's boring, it's dumb, it doesn't go anywhere, it's super lame. If for some reason that I can't possibly fathom, you want to check out this show, it's on Amazon Prime. Thank God, means not a lot of people will be subjected to this. One of those rare cases where I'm actually glad that the show is on Amazon Prime and not on Crunchyroll. But yeah, I definitely don't recommend it. At best, it's the failed ambitious experiment with a promising start. At worst, it's a pretentious, meandering snore fest that doesn't do or say anything interesting by the end, and also has some really gross misogynist subtext mixed in with all that pointless drivel it calls a narrative. So stay away from this one, folks. One of the worst drops in quality of story, character writing, and dialogue over the course of a series I have ever seen. And yes, I have watched all of Game of Thrones. Trust me, this is much worse. The writing is so incredibly meaningless, dumb, boring, and awful by the end, it shouldn't have come as a surprise that it gets one of the most unsatisfying, pointless endings ever, but it's even worse than I expected. Babylon is overly ambitious and mind-numbingly lazy at the same time. I don't know how it did that, but it did, which is quite a feat, but not a good one. Oh, and by the way, in case you were still wondering what Magasu's deal was, what her motives were, how she got her mind control powers, where she came from. The title of the show actually already gave it away. She is the literal whore of Babylon! Yes! That one from the fucking Bible! The one that rides into town on a seven-headed beast to bring about the apocalypse! And that seven-headed beast is the G7 summit! Fuck you! Fuck this show! Fuck the writers responsible for this! Fuck me for watching this! Fuck anime! Ah!
Well, now that we've finished talking about CC's new favorite show that he's going to put up on the shelf right next to Shield Hero.
I need to find my composure. Give me a moment, but continue.
We're going to switch gears and talk about a show that I think was at least a little bit better than the one we previously talked about with Fire Force. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, this was based on a manga authored by the same person who wrote Soul Eater, Atsushi Okubo. So,
I like Soul Eater. At least, I haven't read the manga. That's still on. I have that. I should read that because the anime ending is different from the manga ending because the manga wasn't finished at that point, at the point the anime wrapped up. And Bones loved to do original endings back in the day.
A mutual friend of ours is not a fan of when Bones did that sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work, but I liked Soul Eater. Like, maybe the ending in the manga is better, but I thought it was a fun shonen show just because, with a very out there design, like unusual, pretty cartoony, some fun characters, some kind of standard but also cool story, interesting horror-esque setting and everything. I really like it. It's one of my, not one of my super favorite shonen, but definitely one of the shonen shows I really enjoyed watching.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about watching the show and I just never got around to it. I don't remember. I think it disappeared off streaming services for like a minute. I think it might be back, but I'm not sure.
But for people who haven't checked it out, it definitely looks really good. Like Bones, of course. It's a really good looking, well animated and fun show in my opinion. So
we should expect no less from Bones.
No.
I feel like.
Definitely not. But this is not done by Bones.
No, this is done by, we'll get to who it's done by in a moment. Okay. So first, let's talk about What is Fire Force about? Spontaneous human combustion, a chaotic phenomenon that has plagued humanity for years, randomly transforming people into flaming, violent creatures known as infernals. While infernals make up the first generation accounts of human combustion, the second and third generations became known as pyrokinetics, people gifted with the ability to manipulate and control their flames while remaining human. To combat the infernal threat and discover the cause, the Tokyo Armed Forces Fire Defense Agency and Holy Church of Seoul produced their answer, the Special Fire Force. Young and eager third-generation pyrokinetic Shinra Kusakabe, nicknamed the Devil's Footprints for his explosive ability to ignite his feet at will, becomes a member of the lively Special Fire Force Company 8. Upholding the brigade's duty to extinguish the blazing infernals and lay their souls to rest, Shinra is determined to become a hero who will save the lives of those threatened by the flame terror. However, this is not the hero's game Shinra imagined. The Fire Force is a fractured mess of feuding brigades. Abnormal infernal sightings are increasing all over Tokyo, and a shadowy group is claiming to have answers to the strange fire that caused the death of Shinra's family 12 years ago. Faced with many obstacles within and outside the Fire Force, Shinra fights to uncover the truth behind the burning mysteries that have kept him in the dark. So, like we were about to say, Fire Force was produced at one. Maybe you've heard of them. Called David Production. It did another little show called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Maybe you've seen it. I don't know.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a thing, I guess.
How did that never come up in our show? Weird. We have been reviewing anime for quite a while now. Never. JoJo's. Whatever.
Yeah, I guess you could say that's pretty. I guess you could say that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, definitely. We love JoJo's, and since then we love David Production.
I was before JoJo's or the anime adaptation of JoJo's was even a Star in the Sky. I mean, one big show, I guess not really big, one show that David Production worked on before that I still really enjoy was Bento.
Oh, right. Was that their show?
Oh, yeah, it definitely was David Pro.
That's cool.
And it's a damn crime that only got one season because it was really fun and really silly. Story all about literally fighting to get your dinner as cheap as you possibly can. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And since then, they have done all seasons of JoJo and also Captain Tsubasa, which, the newest iteration of that, which like I said in my review of that, I loved. So, yeah, good stuff expected from them, but animation-wise, never as good as this, in my opinion. Holy shit. Yeah, man. This, I feel like they put their JoJo money to pretty good use with Fire Force.
No kidding.
There's a lot of exciting and well-framed stuff, without really diving too deep into what we want to talk about with the story, but I feel like there's a lot of really well-framed stuff going on that makes the action really intense and exciting, especially later on, that I was not expecting, because I didn't know much about this show going into it other than firefighters literally fighting fire with fire. Cool. Mm-hmm. Sign me up. How many anime or manga do you know that are about firefighters?
Don't know any offhand. Maybe there's one where there's a firefighter in there or something, with the tokusatsu team or something. Super Sentai team.
When this was announced and the first trailers were coming out, I was like, oh, it's Burning Rangers.
I guess.
Kind of.
And, when I first saw it, I was a bit put off by the design because they look like firefighters, albeit with flashy blue lines on their uniforms that look super cool in the dark because they have this blue neon glow that, like I said, if there's a fighting scene at night and you have the flames shooting everywhere, but their black uniforms with the blue stripes, all of that looks super distinctive and cool. And but it's just these giant puffy uniforms that makes them look kind of like Marshmallow Man at times. And it's a very unique and interesting look for, a shonen anime. I mean, they do some spins of that, there's character, which we'll get to, that barely wears their uniform. But
so we feel the same way about that character then. Cool. All right.
Yeah, we'll get to her. The most, another character wears like kind of a witch hat. She's a fire witch. And, there are some differences, definitely in the uniform. But, just in terms of what you expect from shonen anime, it's like, okay, these maybe bulky or lean characters with very defined body proportions and everything. And sometimes in this, the characters can just like fucking sacks of clothes. It's funny. I liked it though. It really grew on me. Like in the beginning when I saw the artwork for it, like the key art, I was like, this looks a bit weird. But then the show won me over with its just astounding fight choreography and action animation and just a show that's called Fire Force, that's all about, like you said, fighting fire with fire, should have amazing looking fire. And it does.
Yeah, it does.
The fire animation is like the high point of the show, in my opinion. How did you feel about it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like when you have like big plumes of flame and the explosions and shit's popping off, that is definitely when the show is most exciting. And, it's the crux of the show. It's, firefighting. But, interspersed through that is this internal investigation of other branches of the Fire Force that have, maybe not the deepest story threads, but there's a little bit of intrigue in there. Like what is this Fire Force company doing? Why is this allowed to happen? That sort of thing. And the underlying plot thread with Shinra and his family, that's pretty interesting stuff too, I think. And the way it sort of starts to come to a head at the end of this season, it got the hooks in me to watch when the second season starts up. I think it's in summer this year in July. Yeah, so
yeah,
gotta wait another 5 months for that.
I gotta admit, like, not to get too far ahead of myself, but for one reason or another, I was a bit tuned out in the middle part of the show.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, overload of characters, but, some of the stuff happening is not that engaging to me. There's some issues with the storytelling in between where it's like, I feel some of the big reveals or big moments in the show don't have sufficient build-up. It all happens just very, I don't know, apropos, matter-of-factly thing, like where it's out of the blue, with, oh, now this shit happens, now this shit happens. And sometimes, that is not always the case, but sometimes I feel like it's just like the plot is rushing along. It feels a bit rushed in general sometimes. And that's when the show just lost me a bit. But by the end, the last third, I think, I got hooked on it again. Like, especially, like you said, the finale and how all the stuff with Shinra's family and, all who the big bad guys are in this story, at least for now, and what their motive is and everything, how that comes into play. And finally, we get some reveals in that regard. And that gets pretty cool and pretty interesting. And there are also some emotional payoffs by the end that are done really well, directed really well, staged really well, which didn't really expect to get from that show. But yeah, that was really cool. And so I came out of it more positively in retrospect than I expected at a certain point.
I really like the setting of the show, that it's like this future past Tokyo. Like I feel like
it's a bit of a steampunky vibe to it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's, because they say in a lot of the preamble, it's like, I think like year 198 of like the Soul calendar, and it's because it's obviously not really like a modern, like a contemporary setting, but it feels like a modernized world with like the steampunk elements and the fact that a lot of it takes place in this big faux Tokyo city.
Yeah. It's a mix of many different influences where it's like you get, your modern, like you said, modern Tokyo firefighter stuff, but then you also have the heavy influence by the church, which, also has their let's say, order of knights, and some of the firefighting departments kind of also look like knights. And then you also have some another section of the city, or of the firefighting department, where everyone looks like they're from Warring States era Japan or something like that, where everyone is looking like they're stuck in samurai time. And you pretty much got all of that mixed into this world. And like you said, that's very interesting. It's a very interesting setting and genre blend.
It's a weird mishmash that kind of works.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say Soul Eater was the same, because that had a very clear horror gimmick, but it was also throwing in some extra things, and the cartoony look of it made it look special. So it feels like this is one of the stylistic sensibilities of the manga artist, the original creator. You definitely know that it's his work, judging by how many skulls are in this fucking show.
Yeah.
He loves himself some skulls. No kidding. But yeah, like you said, I think the visual style, just the setting, everything of that show is pretty damn cool, and has even though it's only kind of mix of things you have mostly seen before, it creates something kind of unique and interesting with all those different influences.
And I kind of like that the different Fire Force companies, not all of their facilities are created equal. Like we see when we're first introduced to Company 8, their building is like ramshackle. It's run down. You can see there's bits falling off of it outside. There's paint stripped off. There's like graffiti on the front of it that just says, Company 8.
I mean, that's also kind of the intent, I guess. Make them look like. I mean, they are this ramshackle, true, and let's be honest, most of the people in that department are idiots, kind of like. With the exception of Hinawa, maybe. I think that's his name. He seems to be a smart guy, and Obi to an extent. But everyone else, they are in one way or another a bit dumb. But, that also makes them not feel like a threat. So them being the ones who investigate the other departments makes sense, right? Because no one will see them coming. Because they are this ramshackle crew, and what are they going to do? They're just a support unit and whatever. No, actually, they're the fucking secret special ops unit, and you just don't know it.
Yeah. Like, look at these goofballs. Who cares about them? Oh, I think you should care about them.
Yeah, that's pretty damn cool. Like, fucking subverting expectations of the villain. I mean, that doesn't hold long. Like... They can't keep that up, because pretty soon they get engaged with the villains. But I don't know. We haven't met all of the other departments and stuff like that. So, and they haven't made their goals clear to thoroughly investigate every department and everything, and how they are involved with this company that is supplying most of the fire department with their gear. I forget what it was called. Hajima Industries. So. I have a feeling like that the real bad guys behind everything are maybe them to an extent. We'll see where this goes, but it's like it feels like the current bad guys are only like a small part, or have only a small part to play in this, and there's some more going on in the background. Like I said, we have only met like 3 other departments, really. I mean, there was a congregation, but
met the first. I believe the 7th, the 5th, maybe a little bit of the 4th.
The 3rd. We definitely met the 4th.
The 3rd, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's still more to come. So I'm interested. I'm interested to see the other departments and the crazy characters they're going to throw away, because there are a bunch of crazy characters in this show.
Yeah, there are. So before we dive too much deeper on the characters and other aspects, a few weeks into this show's run was the unfortunate incident involving the fire at Kyoto Animation Studio 1. And as like a show of respect and solidarity, the show was actually delayed a couple of weeks. And after it came back, they actually changed, I believe, part of the ending sequence such that it didn't depict people burning in a fire.
Yeah.
And that was I feel like that was the respectful thing to do.
Yeah, they did that. I think the flashback for the sister, what was her name? Uh,
Iris.
Iris flashback, and or Hibana. I mean, their flashbacks are kind of the same.
Oh yeah.
Their backstory and their flashback to that and what happened at their orphanage and everything, or their monastery. That also got kind of blacked out. And I think they changed some stuff to black and white of a burning house and stuff like that, and maybe changed the color of some flames from red to blue. I don't remember. They did some visual stuff to maybe make, to maybe not trigger any, I don't know, PTSD in people who were too close to that occurrence. And I don't know, just out of respect, like you mentioned. And I think that's a good thing. Like, people who complained about that can get fucked.
Yeah.
No, really. Like, I assume that they used the original version for the Blu-rays, and only the TV version got edited. And even if it doesn't, who gives a shit? Like, it's not like this destroys the show or anything. Like, some things are obscured. It's like, a bit with things you see when they're too if certain scenes are too lewd for TV animation, then they, I don't know, fucking do light rays that cover the nipples on the boobs of the girls, and
or censorship though.
Yeah. And you can argue that that's just dumb because those shows often don't have any more merit besides that, the tits. So why would you even? But or put it on TV even. But in this case, it's like, hey, something bad happened in real life, in the real world, and they just wanted not to step on anyone's toes and wanted to be respectful to the victims and everything. And I think that's commendable. That's a good thing, and I'm glad that they did that.
It was the right thing to do.
Yes, definitely. And like I said, it doesn't take away from the show in any way. Like, it doesn't hurt it in any way.
I mean, the narrative, as far as I think we could tell, stayed largely the same afterwards. So
yeah, maybe some detail with, there is, in the beginning of the show, there is a big focus on the people turning into these fire demons, these infernals, and how they suffer when that happens to them. It's like a big focus on that. Like, the show wants to make sure to show you how horrible that is for the people and their relatives. And I can imagine that something like that might have been also in, or supposed to be in, the episodes that came after the fire, but they took that out to not make it too harrowing on people who watch this, because it was even harrowing before the Kyoani fire happened, right? So I can't even imagine, for someone who has gone through something like this, then see, an anime series with such, where there's a basically walking corpse on fire, and then the show tells you that he's in constant pain, and their daughter or son or whatever asks them to save their parent. That must, holy shit. So I can imagine they took something like that out if that was supposed to be in there after the fire happened. But even then, we got that in the beginning, so that point of the show was made clear, and we didn't need any more of that. So yeah, like I said, I don't think the show was hurt by this in any way, and I think it was the absolutely right decision to trim the problematic imagery down a bit.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on from that, you also wanted to talk briefly about the music for this show, which was composed by one Kenichiro Suehiro, who has come up in our talks about both Space Patrol Luluko and Golden Kamui.
Indeed.
A perennial favorite of ours. Man,
also, both shows with good soundtracks.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I guess he did the music for ReZero as well, but I haven't watched that.
Me neither.
But yes. But yeah.
Grand Elm apparently too. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, to say this show's soundtrack is anything other than fire.
Be damned.
Would be very remiss of me and a missed opportunity to make a really bad pun. Hey-oh.
Of course.
Listen, I gotta.
Yeah, it's in your nature. Why resist?
Those of you who stuck around past the very end of the last podcast will understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Small after credit scene.
Well,
we went the Marvel route.
But yeah, this show has some great animation, presentation, music, and I think we can actually start to talk about the characters a bit.
Yes.
So, how about we talk about our main character, Shinra Kusakabe, who is as I described during the intro segment, the devil's footprints, because his pyrokinetic power lets him set his feet on fire, and he can fly around at super fast speeds, and he has some very ferocious kicks to go with that speed. He's pretty straightforward kind of kid. Just wants to be the hero.
He wants to save everyone.
Yes, but he has this one nervous tick where he smiles like this really goofy, toothy grin smile that's very, very much out of Soul Eater.
Yeah. But Soul Eater has a very, for Soul Eater, it's a very confident, he has a very confident, cocky smile. And for Shinra, it's always supposed to be, even though it looks kind of creepy and, off-putting, it's supposed to be this really awkward reaction when he feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a really good character trait. Yeah.
It doesn't always work. There's some scenes in there, especially there's one scene with another character we'll get to. I'll just mention it when we bring that character up, but that didn't work for me, where it was really creepy instead of funny or relatable. But aside from that, I thought that was a neat idea. Okay, yeah. I get, especially when we dive into his background, and he was treated in his youth because of what happened to his family and everything, and the smile being a reaction to that, or people misinterpreting that smile in a way and judging him for that and stuff like that. And yeah, it's cool. It's actually part of his character. It's not just a gimmick. So yeah, I liked it.
I know you were a little worried at first because his voice actor, Gakuto Kajiwara, one of his other big roles is Asta from Black Clover. And Asta is very loud and very just sort of overhype, or just overly crazy energetic. But I think he managed to sort of reel himself in really well for this role.
Did a really good job.
Yeah, so I think all of our worries were sort of gone immediately when he sort of this character, I feel like, sort of let him show a bit more range than I'm the strongest magician sort of character. Which I don't know if Asta sort of evens out later on. Because...
He does, so at least so I've heard.
Okay.
It takes a bit for him to find his footing and to become a compelling character, but apparently he does. And again, one of the reasons I would kind of like to check out Black Clover again, but this getting over the beginning of the show might be tough. But on the other hand, I have a lot of time on my hands soon, so we'll see if that happens. But there are a lot of episodes now. I think it's at episode 70 or 80 or something like that. So we'll see.
Still reasonable.
Yeah. I have watched longer shows. That's true.
I mean, it's not like if we stopped recording and I was like, "Hey, I feel like starting One Piece right now. See you in 2 years."
At least. Yeah, definitely.
So how about we talk about oh boy, Shinra's, I guess you could call him rival, Arthur Boyle.
My favorite character.
Arthur is like the embodiment of, if you believe in yourself, you can do it.
He's a fucking chunibyo.
Yeah, he is. Oh,
like 100%. He is the epitome of that. The postal child. Like everything he does is for the sake of being more knightly. Because for some reason his power increases when he feels more knightly. Which is, first of all, like mind over matter thing, just the most amazing way to make that happen.
Yeah.
But also how the show makes that happen, because he's so fucking delusional. It's fucking amazing. Like there's one scene in the later parts of the show where one of the other characters just straps a donkey head on Arthur's dick, and Arthur calls it silver, and it actually makes him stronger because he considers it his steed, his knightly steed. And it's so dumb, and it's great, and I love it. I mean, it doesn't last it only lasts for a hot minute. But
I mean, he comes to the realization that, oh, it's not actually my knightly steed. Oh,
no, it's
and
actually
his power just sort of.
Yeah, but there are so many great moments with him, because the show is really good at making Arthur look cool and like a complete doofus at the same time. Like he often fucks up his theatralic speeches, but he also has like these really cool moments in fight scenes where he just suddenly does this super cool move just because he believes in himself and is super cocky. And then immediately after that, he does something super dumb because he's still, he's kind of a pretender. But I like that.
He's got two nicknames. One is the King of the Night and the other is Idiot.
Yes, and that fits perfectly. Like, he almost loses a fight because he hasn't realized that he is holding his sword in the wrong hand. Like, Arthur is fucking great. I love that character. I didn't expect him to. I was like, oh god, this is just fucking dumbass comedic relief character, and he is. But he's actually funny, in my opinion. I had to laugh a lot of his at a lot of his gags, or the gags related to him.
So every time he tries to introduce himself, he's like, yes, I am a knight. And Shinra will be like, the king knight. Oh.
Yeah.
He's almost like, Shinra's almost like, I don't want to admit this, but get your introduction right, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just like, I like him a lot. I mean, the humor in the show is a difficult thing, in my opinion. Like, the editing on the jokes sometimes doesn't work. Like, it's a bit too slow. The timing is off. Like, some shots just linger too long on a certain scene, and it loses some of its pow. Like, the punchline gets lost in that somehow. Just I don't know. It's a specific brand of comedy that I've seen in, Japanese comedies before, but that doesn't work for me. I rather see those rapid fire jokes, visual gags, and slapstick gags than, just one visual gag and then the camera weirdly lingering on the characters, not knowing how to react to that. It just doesn't work, and that's too often in this show, in my opinion. Like, it feels like there's supposed to be a laughing track there, and someone forgot to put it in. It's like, it's super weird, and sometimes that happens in the show, more so in the beginning than later. I feel like it gets a bit snappier later on, but still. Yeah. But aside from that, I thought a lot of the gags worked really, really well.
Oh, man, Arthur. You poor, dumb soul.
We love you.
Yes, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
One of the other characters is Maki Oze. She's awesome. She uses her fire powers to conjure up like little fire spirits, kind of like will-o'-the-wisp sort of things.
Yeah, which some people in the squad, Hinawa is definitely not fine with that. He just fucking immediately destroys them, and Maki's like, no! Spot her! And you feel sorry for her, because they're super cute.
Yeah. And, I mean, we see that she can manipulate them in different ways, like combine them into, like, larger versions and whatnot.
Yeah, and they're actually, later in the show, there's some really cool way she can get to use them once they get a person who can actually construct some weapons that make use of that for her.
Yeah.
And that results in one of the best fight scenes in the show, in my opinion. One of the most kick-ass, like, okay, you are all cannon fodder to me moments. Because Maki is fucking ripped, bro.
Yeah, she is.
Do you even lift? Holy
that's
shit.
not something you see in anime a lot, is letting the female characters be, strong.
Yeah, holy shit. Like, she is ripped all over, and the show isn't afraid to show it. And, she's super strong. I think the only one stronger in the squad is the Captain Obi. But she's second to that, and she can just punch anyone out. And she does. Like, she can be super scary, especially if you make the mistake of calling her a Cyclops gorilla, even if you really didn't. But, she's a bit insecure about the whole thing. I kind of didn't like that. I was like, okay, hey, oh my god, she's a muscular girl, so obviously she must struggle with her body image. I was like, come on. Well, why is that in here? Like, why can't she be like this confident, tough, ripped woman instead of being like, oh, I wished I looked more girly? What the fuck? That was just like this small thing on the side. There was like, why did you even put that in there? Fuck off. Like, I didn't like that. But aside from that, she's a great character. And I really liked what they do with her and how much she kicks ass.
She gets to be super cool pretty much all throughout. Talk a little bit about Hinawa, I guess. He's Takehisa Hinawa is one of the, I don't know, would you really call him like one of the captains of Company 8?
Vice captain, I guess.
Yeah.
He's the strategic dude. He's responsible for everything being in order. Hey, everyone, do your paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork in the show. Holy shit, like every other scene you see the characters like brooding over fucking paperwork from their last mission. The show's very intent on showing us that is a thing. If you are a firefighter, you have to do a lot of reports. And he is responsible for making sure that happens, that everyone is doing their job in that regard.
And he's definitely the one who keeps everyone in line. He's always got this very serious look on his face all the time.
He is also a good cook.
Yes, it's true. He's an awesome cook. Everyone looks forward to his meals. But yeah, he's, I guess, the group dad sort of thing.
Yeah, a bit. A very strict stoic group dad who is very intent on not letting anyone like step out of order or something.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could transition to talking about Obi. He's also kind of a group dad, but not quite in the same way. He's just he wants to make sure that everyone's getting their thing done, but he's not like super strict about it the way Hinawa is.
Yeah, he's more like he's a superior definitely, but he's more the big brother type.
Yeah,
he seems like this very friendly, open-hearted. But it's interesting, like, him and Hinawa on the outside, they feel like they're these complete opposites in a way. But when you get to learn about their backstory, you see that they formed like this really strong connection. Like, they're really good friends. And, when they met each other in the academy and stuff like that, they immediately connect due to their empathy and compassion for the infernal victims. And, instantly develop immense respect for each other. And I really like their character connection. The show doesn't spend too much time on that, but enough to make you realize and to make it believable that those two characters would go through hell for each other. And I appreciated that. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, you can tell they definitely have a really strong bond. And, the two characters personality-wise couldn't be any more different. But you know what they say, that opposites attract, so.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I like I said, I think they're cool chiefs.
After that, things sort of start to branch out from Company 8, because part of the plot, as we said, revolves around investigating other companies. So they start to introduce other characters from other companies. I feel like there's a lot of characters to talk about. I don't know how
we don't need to talk all of them, but maybe we should talk about the characters that eventually end up in Department 8.
All right. So I guess we could talk about Princess Hibana, who is forgot to mention. Well, we could tie that in with her. Hibana, who is the sister of one of the other members of Company 8, Iris. Iris is basically I guess you could say she's a nun from the Holy Soul Temple, and she helps put the souls of the infernals to rest when Company 8 is out there trying to extinguish them. It's very sort of, I guess, a demure character, but she's not like...
She's not submissive.
Yeah, that's a good word to use.
But she's kind of dumb. I'm sorry, Iris is kind of dumb. Like they're or naive at least.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch of scenes in the show where she just does something where we're like, why are you doing what? Like pushing the button in Vulcan's workshop, where it's like, stop it! The fuck. Also,
don't
not
push that button. I'm gonna push it.
Also, I mean, I know they play that for a joke, but her not being able to tell imposter Tamaki apart from real Tamaki, that's also, it's like, what? This girl, you're a bit stupid. But it's fine. She's a lovable character. But she's a bit of a ditz.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hibana was a nun in the Holy Soul Temple alongside Iris. Things happened, and now she is captain of Company 5. And Hibana has a very particular personality where everyone underneath her is very much referred to as gravel.
Yeah. Hard dominatrix vibes.
Yeah, a little bit. But when Company 8 goes to investigate Company 5, and they sort of see that, hey, the problem is once again even bigger than they thought, Hibana decides, hey, I'll cooperate with you guys, and she becomes very taken with Shinra. It's not even subtle.
You're not. She so wants his dick. Like, holy shit. Which is fun, and it's kind of fun because she's kind of the only character who does that. It's not like we are getting this harem thing where every girl in the crew is out for Shinra's dick, which sometimes can happen. But the fact that she is the one where that happens, and one other character maybe the tsundere type. But no, she's not even towards Shinra. She's not even, despite her dominatrix-ass personality, she's not even that, like, tsundere character. She's not like, I'm gonna put him under my heel. No, at a certain point, she's like, no, I would like to maybe tie him up, but keep him just for myself and maybe cook for him and take care of she's very smitten with him. And that's just so completely counter to the rest of what she does that it's kind of endearing. So it's like, I mean, sure, why not? It's a lot of fun. I think I like her character. I mean, yeah, she's definitely of that kind of archetype. She's definitely one of the least offensive and most fun characters I've come across.
Yeah. On the other side of the fence is Tamaki. Things happen in Company 1 that lead to Tamaki joining with Company 8, and I mean, Tamaki starts off all right, and then she just ends up being a vehicle for dumb fan service at the weirdest times, because why not, dude?
Yeah, she has this weird power that makes her stumble into weird compromising situations without, her actually wanting to do that or anyone else. Like, she's the running ecchi joke where, in another show where, I don't know, a girl slips on a banana and then falls on the guy with her boobs, and then the guy gets slapped around. One of the things I hate the most in anime when it comes to jokes. And Tamaki is kind of just that. Where it's like, for some reason, she just stumbles and loses all of her clothes. And then is very embarrassed. She doesn't really always, punch guys around for doing that. She's more just, oh God, I can't believe this is happening to me. but it happens all the time, and it's maybe funny the first time it happens. Maybe. But then it happens another time and another time. And in every fucking episode she's in it, it at least happens once. And it gets so boring and trite and repetitive, and it's pointless, and it's not funny. It's lazy. I mean, it's lazy in the way that it's always the same joke, but they come up with a lot of different situations where that happens to her and how they can incorporate that. So I guess it's technically not that lazy, but still, it's dumb. And it's just kind of demeaning to the character, because Tamaki really has some potential. She's part of a bigger story plot thread that happens during the end of the first third of the show, I guess.
Yeah.
There's some big revelations and everything.
And you feel bad for her because, she doesn't know that things were going on the way they were. And then after that, it's like, oh... Yeah, everything you built up for her just sort of got tossed out the window.
Yeah, there's this really fantastic scene between her and Shinra after a big battle. Like this really emotional, super well animated scene with like this fantastic facial animation for her. Where it's like fucking, where she bursts into, it's so good. It's so emotional. It's really well done. Just fucking... David Production just flexing their fucking animation muscles. Just, yeah, you want to feel for that character, we make you feel for that character. Here you go. It's like, good lord, it's amazing. And then, like you said, immediately afterwards, the next episode, fuck it. Here, I have another shot where she rams her fucking crotch into a guy's face. And it's just, I don't know. I don't mind fan service. Just to get that out of the way. I think I've said that before. But I really don't mind fan service when it's like not the whole point of one character. Or if it's a point of a whole character, if that character is not too prominent. The problem is Tamaki is part of the main crew. She is part of all the stories in this show. And so that shit is always happening. And there's also fan service with Hibana, and I don't mind that. I find that to be funny and mostly endearing to a point. But with Tamaki, it's just, I don't know. Hey, here, have some lewdness, and I guess it's funny because she doesn't want that to happen, which, no. And there was the thing I mentioned before, where it's Shinra's smile. The one scene where Shinra's smile doesn't work is when she comes across her for the first time, I think it is, and then her fucking lucky ledger, or whatever her power is called, comes into effect. And he accidentally grabs her boob under her shirt. And then she looks up and he has this smile on his face and it looks super creepy. Like he's a fucking predator or something. It's like, no, what's coming next? And Jesus Christ. Did anyone look at this scene and was like, maybe we shouldn't do that? That just stood out to me. And that whole aspect of her character just didn't work for me. I think I can deal with her tsundere antics, that's fine. She obviously also has a thing for Shinra, which she doesn't want to admit to. She and Hibana are the two characters that are kind of into him. But, then we have that dumb fan service joke thing all the time with her. And unlike all the stuff with Arthur, it's not funny. It's not, maybe for some people. It's like, oh, look, she lost her pants again. Isn't that hilarious? I mean, if that is funny to you, more power to you, okay. But to me, that's just lazy. Even if it's in different situations. It's just the same joke over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I could tell, a lot of the opinion of Tamaki is pretty much this. Yeah. So, yeah. It's unfortunate because the character could be more than she is, but then,
it's a bummer.
I guess one of the last characters we'll touch on is Vulcan. He is this super inventive and super smart engineer who makes all sorts of gizmos and gadgets, and he was his grandfather who was part of the Fire Force, I think, right?
I think his grandfather, or at least, at least some. I remember that one of his ancestors actually created Amaterasu, or help construct that the never-ending flame that powers the city.
Yeah,
I know that happened.
At one point, Vulcan's father and grandfather turned into infernals, and which made Vulcan kind of wary of the top brass, and he just decided, hey, I don't want any associations with the Fire Force, which, fair. But when Company 8 comes rolling around and says, hey, we hear you're really good at the making stuff things. Can you come be our engineer? We need you an engineer, a repair guy, because we don't have the budget that the rest of the companies do. And he's very sort of trepidatious about it. He's not really sure because, there's because of his past and with his family and some other researchers that sort of come into play alongside that. But he sort of, I guess you could say, is unwillingly pulled in, but it ends up being for the best for him because things just sort of start to go to pot all around him. And it's kind of unfortunate to see, but
Yeah, it's also like it's interesting. He plays a kind of a pivotal role in what happens after that. Also, one of the main bad guy, Giovanni, has some kind of relation to him. It's not been made super clear yet what his role in Vulcan's backstory was. To an extent, it has been, but not entirely. But yeah, Giovanni is one of the big bads by the end. He's the leader of Department 3 or something. And that guy is a creepy motherfucker.
Yeah.
So
he just goes around wearing that plague mask all day long.
Yeah, and it's really cool that they gave Vulcan a connection to one of the bigger bad guys, like to make his character more relevant to the main plot, but also give him a motivation to actually join the Company 8 and everything. And that's cool. Also, we learned this really interesting side bit that, like, most of the animals in this world are extinct because of that huge, fire apocalypse thing that happened. And I think that's actually, was it? Yeah, that was Vulcan's motivation. He's an animal freak. He's like super animal fanboy, and he wants to somehow bring the animals back to the Earth, like to life. And he shows some of the other characters this hologram of the Earth's past days with whales and elephants and certain birds. And none of the non-characters have seen those animals before because they have been dead before they got born. So that was kind of a touching scene where Shinra and Iris and Arthur see like elephants for the first time. That was kind of cool. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. I guess they wouldn't know. I guess because that has all disappeared from the world. And yeah, so it makes Vulcan's motivation pretty relatable, and also, him connecting to the characters works out like that. So yeah, it's cool. He's a cool character in my opinion. He has a cool, very metal look. He loves to wear like this fucking deer mask or whatever it is, and fucking drum around on tin cans or shit like that, or metal barrels, and just he's a drummer. Yeah, he's really cool. I like Vulcan a lot. There's this great visual gag. Like I said, he's the one who straps the donkey head to Arthur, but there's also, he wants to get the other characters away from his shed in the beginning when they meet him, when they try to recruit him, and he throws cans at them. And he throws a can at Arthur, and Arthur tries to just slug it away with his sword or something, and the can just pops and just right into his face. And Shinra is just like, oh, you fucking idiot. Yeah, I love Arthur. But yeah, a bunch of cool characters, man, in this show.
This show's cast is wild, man.
And in the bad guy department too, like there's some really enigmatic bad guys, like we mentioned Giovanni already, and one I can't get off the. I don't want to give the name away for, because he's not a bad guy, or he isn't introduced as a bad guy. But who is like this really neat, twisted version of your typical hot-blooded shonen protagonist that you see in other shonen anime. And they turn this into a really crazy, creepy subversion of that thing, where he comes across like a total fucking psychopath or sociopath. And yeah, that's cool. Like, and you're really happy when you see that guy gets his face stomped in. That's a really cool moment. Again, where the animation shines, like where the animation quality comes into play again, because that fight looks really cool. And you're really cheering for Shinra to kick his fucking ass. And yeah, good stuff. Like in general, like I said, the middle part, wasn't too invested in that. But like the first third and the last third, I think, introduction of all the characters, and then the last third where Vulcan comes into play, and we actually get to meet the first big bad guys who are behind most of the shit, or at least some of them. We have many kind of bad guy parties in this, actually. Like 3, if I count correctly, maybe only 2, but it's not really clear where the bad guys sections are aligned and where they are not. So I'm really looking forward to season 2 to find out more about that, because some of them are definitely not playing the same game as the others. So yeah, it's really interesting. Like the series still has a lot of things to show us when it comes to the plot behind the bad guys. So I'm looking forward to that.
There are some, I don't know if we call a lot of them twists, but there's some surprises in there where you think some characters are all about one thing, and you find out, hey, maybe they're about this thing, or are they really? There's one guy he's sort of shown to be the top of the chain, but we're not 100% certain of that. Yeah. Because we don't know 100% what his deal is, but he and Shinra have some clashes. And it makes for some interesting fights and some interesting plot pieces as well. So
definitely.
I don't want to give it away, because it's
we're going to talk about it in our season 2 review, because that's going to happen, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's some dramatic change in season 2 for the worst, I mean, I'm sure we will revisit this later on as well.
I doubt it. I mean, like, either you're into this kind of shonen formula or you're not. And judging from what I've seen from Soul Eater, its creator doesn't really stray that much from it. Like, what you see is what you get. Few plot surprises aside, just in terms of where the show is going, is more a straightforward good versus evil thing. And, with some maybe emotional surprises on the road. And so far, I think Fire Force has kind of delivered on that. And, like I said, lost a bit of interest in some parts, and some things, like, it didn't work out for me in terms of the comedy. And, some of it feeling maybe a bit rushed when it came to its emotional climaxes. But by the end, it was, again, like I said, it had me hooked again. And I thought it finished really strong. That first season did. And that's why I think it's definitely worth sticking with it.
Yeah, I guess the middle part with Company 7 is kind of, but you get our introduction to Benimaru and Konro in there, and they're all right characters, but
yeah, they're all right.
They don't seem to stick around super long in this season. After that, I'm sure they'll have to pop up again later on, because they played them up during those few episodes. But it's fine. It's one sort of lull in there with some goofy antics that sort of go on. But otherwise, this show is fucking fun as hell, man. It has super big cast with a lot of fun characters. The David production flexing that muscle, man. Oof.
Oh yeah.
Oh, those fights were really tight, and the explosions and the fire, like we said, those have such great detail in them, and the music helps give a lot of emotional weight to many of the scenes.
Also really epic in the fight scenes. Like there's like this really dark humming orchestral score when there's a build up for a big fight scene, and I think the soundtrack always delivers in that regard. It's it's really good stuff.
Suehiro needs to be on our short list of composers that we like to hear a lot more often.
That's not a short list anymore, though.
Yeah, it's yes.
There are a lot of good anime composers out there.
It's true.
Like
it's true.
Maybe one of these days we need to do a top 10 or something. But yeah, it's it definitely he's one of those guys. You know, we love the soundtrack of Golden Kamuy, but I think in certain aspects this is even a step up from that. And yeah, I liked it a lot, and yeah, it does good things for the show.
Definitely, it helps. It definitely helps elevate like pretty much every scene throughout. We have rambled on about this show for a while, so I think you can tell that we recommend you watch it. And if you're interested in doing so, you can check it out on Crunchyroll, Verve, Funimation, and Hulu here in the States. Any place in particular in Europe they can watch it?
I don't know about all of Europe, but in Germany, as Live Chart tells me, it's on Wakanim again, which seemed to be one of the major streaming, or seem to have become one of the major streaming services over here, even more prevalent than Crunchyroll, actually. I think this point is our big thing, and I don't know who's actually behind that company. Pretty much all the recent shows that we reviewed just landed on their service. So I'm not really sure who is behind them. It might be one of the DVD publishing companies, Kaze, that is pretty much putting out all the anime on DVD or Blu-ray over here. So that might be it. I'm not sure. But yeah, if you subscribe to that in Germany, then that's where you will find Fire Force over here.
But yeah, definitely do check it out. Definitely looking forward to the next season.
Yeah, so do I. You could say at this point my expectations are set ablaze.
All right. Okay.
And that is a wrap on the 90th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for a review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
So long, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
The fine line between beast and man
becomes even more indistinct
as we reach for our star.